Hello and welcome to the Trust Factor Podcast, the only podcast that guarantees your success when you implement its divine, age-old teachings. Today we're talking to someone whose voice has become a source of strength for thousands across Canada. Guidy Mammon is a respected lawyer, a proud Jew, and a bold advocate for Israel. In a time of rising anti-Semitism and global tension, he stepped forward, organizing rallies, speaking publicly, and defending Israel in a powerful and articulate way. You'll know him mostly from the rallies that took place, the pro-Israel rallies at Bathurst and Sheppard every Sunday since the early days of the war, ending very recently when, thank God, all the hostages came home. Today, we're diving into his journey, his leadership, and what drives him to stand up when others stand back. And with that, I want to welcome to the podcast. Welcome, Guidy.
Jesse, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm very excited. I want to talk about, there's so much to cover off. As you know, we don't spend too much time on the podcast in general. We want to let people get on with their day, but we want to start them off on the right foot. So having said that and having given that introduction, I'm sure, knowing you, that you were a pro-Israel advocate before that tragic day in October. And I think it's safe to say that since October the 7th, it's taken a completely different turn and it's gotten amped up to the point where you've dedicated so much time and resources. Can you tell me, what was that moment? Was it October 7th? Was it right after October 7th? Was there a defining moment where you said, I need to take this to the next level of my advocacy?
There's no question. First of all, October 7th hit me like a ton of bricks, just like it did for everybody in the Jewish community. It was earth-shattering. What did it for me is that, I don't know if you'll remember, on October the 7th, just a few days after that, Hamas and Hezbollah, they declared a global day of jihad. And what our community did was they warned the community not to send their kids to school, to Hebrew schools, not to let them go out with kippahs on, not to wear Magen Davids, because there was tremendous fear out there. At that moment, I knew we had to do something because I didn't feel that was leadership that we needed. I think we needed to be very strong. Instead of making our community members scared and worried, we needed to give them confidence, had to give them hope, and we had to show them courage in times like these. Even though it was a devastating time, we didn't know how many hostages had been taken. We didn't know how many people were killed. We didn't know if there were still terrorists in Israel. We didn't know if they reached Beersheba or Ashkelon. We didn't know a lot of things. We didn't know if Hezbollah was going to attack. So that moment, I was wrapping up my tefillin in the morning at the kollel of Rabbi Pinto, and there was a buddy of mine sitting next to me. I said, you know what? It was Friday morning. And I said, let's go to Bathurst and Sheppard and let's wave the flag, the Israeli flag. He said, yeah, let's do that. So I called another friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Esther Bakinka, and I said, you know what, meet us at Bathurst and Sheppard. We're going to wave the Canadian flag and the Israeli flag. And when we saw the reaction of people, many people were honking and honking. They were so excited to see someone holding up the Israeli flag on Global Jihad Day. But a lot of people were driving by with broken. They looked broken. They were crying. They looked at us. They were tearing up, and we saw how much pain there was out there in the community. And so that was Friday, October the 13th, 2023. And then we said we have to come back on Sunday. The community needs a lot of support. We need to inspire people. We need to make them come out of their shells. And that's what happened. And then, wow. One Sunday led to another Sunday, and the crowds just kept on coming and growing. We bought flags, and we bought more flags, and we had to buy flags by the dozens and then by the hundreds. And so it went.
I remember the early days, and I love that you remember the exact day, and I love the fact that it happened when you were finished wrapping your tefillin. This is what the podcast is about. It's about bringing God into your life and doing his work. And you literally took that step. I always talk about taking the first step. That's the only thing that we control. The outcome we don't. And boy, did you take that first step, and you did it right when you finished taking off your tefillin. It's unbelievable. I love that story. You also mentioned Esther Bakinka, another powerhouse, another individual I'd love to have on the podcast. So many people have come out of the woodworking, and Aaron talked about this last week. How one of the silver linings of October 7th is that so many people have come out and stepped up their game and have supported the cause. Did that surprise you, how many people came and how quick it all came together?
It's shocking. We call them the October 8th Jews, people who came out and found themselves Jewish only on October the 8th. I mean, of course, they, ate matzo ball soup and they had Friday night dinners, but to be part of Klal Yisrael, to be part of the solution, we had a massive problem on October the 7th. Many people were very worried about the future for the state of Israel and our friends and family in Israel. But on October 8th, they transformed. They really transformed, and they needed a little bit of a push. They needed a little bit of direction. They didn't have it. A lot of these people were never involved in a rally. They were never involved in advocacy. They were never seeing, tasting, smelling anti-Semitism up close. And October the 8th changed a lot. A lot of people changed on that day. People we've never seen before drove by, saw us waving the flags, pulled over into the plaza and say, you know what, I'll go wave a flag for 10 minutes. And 2 years later, they're still standing by our side. It was unbelievable.
I remember that excitement. I remember joining myself and driving by and thinking, this can't be real. It was overwhelming to watch all these people and the joy and the intensity and the smiles. And I mean, the energy was unbelievable, and there was almost not enough parking, and there was not enough room for everybody to stand on the streets. And then, so much goes into this. We just see what it looks like from afar, but give us some insight. I remember on the early days going to somebody's house, it may have even been your house, where we were like stapling flags onto these large dowels, right?
That's right, exactly. That was my house. I mean, almost all the flags were made and manufactured on our dining room table. We would just say, we need help putting some flags together. We need help doing, making signs. We need help doing this. And they just came. They just came and they poured their heart into it. And we're not just talking about, average Joes. Everybody from, the highest economic sort of strata to the bottom, and just everybody pitched in. It was something I'll never forget. I mean, in the course of my years, I've made friends here and there, but basically in 2 years, I made not dozens, more than dozens of friends who are going to remain friends forever. This was truly a transformative time for a lot of people, and I think that's what we needed. We needed something to bring us together, and I promise you, Jesse, that was really not my intention on that day. I was just very upset that the Jewish leadership told us to basically stay home and hide in the basement.
Right.
I didn't go out there trying to make Jews more religious or put on tefillin, but that's exactly what happened. When 20, 30, 40 people started coming, so did the buchers. The buchers from Chabad, they came and they would start rapping. And then after a while, there was 2 buchers. And then there'd be a rabbi and 2 buchers, and then 2 rabbis and 3 rabbis. I remember Rabbi Rubisky coming up to me and saying to me, close to the end of the rally, it wasn't even the end. He said, how many tefillin we've put on today? I said, how many? He says, 140. Now, I could never in my life believe that this rally would attract that many people to put on tefillin. And I'm going to tell you, there's people there who hadn't put on tefillin in decades, since their bar mitzvahs, 10, right. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, they hadn't put on tefillin. And, I'd go on the microphone and say, listen, I know a lot of you guys are not accustomed to put on tefillin. That's okay. But if it can help one soldier or one hostage, if there's just 1% chance that can happen, what does it hurt? We're standing here freezing anyways. We're freezing to death. We're getting rained on. So what's the difference if you put on tefillin for 20 seconds or 30 seconds? It's not going to be the end of the world. And it just started to avalanche, and then it just became the norm. Guys who never put tefillin would see other guys who never put tefillin on, putting on tefillin, and so they did the same.
I just finished saying yesterday, repeating, because I've said it a few times throughout the podcast, that there's a verse that says, that Hashem says to us, open up a hole for me the size of a pinhole, and I will open up for you a hole the size of an auditorium. And if you can imagine the relativity between a pinhole and an auditorium, it's astronomical. And so it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what you did was you did just that. You opened up that hole, and then Hashem took over and said, you wanted to do this. It's exactly the right thing that needs to happen, and I'm going to have your back, and everything just exploded after that. Does that sound right?
Yeah, except for the word you. I would love to be able to take all the credit and say, I was a genius, and this, was all my hard work. one guy standing at the corner of Bathurst and Sheppard does not change anything. It was all these people who came, who didn't want to see me alone, who wanted to be part of something, even if it was something small, that was defiant, that was beautiful, that was uniting, that was strong, that was brave and courageous and inspirational. And it's those people, each and every one of them, who deserves the same credit. Because like I said, a rally of one is not really that much of a rally. But when we got together and someone would film us, and we would, I don't know if you're aware, but we would invite people who have friends and relatives in the IDF who are in Gaza and in Lebanon, Syria, and we would ask for their Hebrew names, and we'd make a bracha for them and their unit, and we would send them a recording, and they could see, not just me, but many people like me, behind me, all the flags behind us, and we would send them these brachas, these acknowledgments by name and by their units, and the families were in tears when they saw, people standing in the freezing cold in Canada, faraway land, mentioning their son or daughter in the army and their unit and their commanders and all that, and hearing a blessing for them. And it gave them the sense that we were truly a nation. They weren't just doing this for themselves and for their homes and their neighborhoods and their borders. They were doing it for every Jew in the world, and that's how we felt. We felt that the IDF and our soldiers were doing this not just for themselves, but for us as well. And that's why we figured as long as they're going to be in Gaza, we're going to be at Bathurst and Sheppard.
Of course. And you know what? It's solidarity and it's unity. And the reality is that unfortunate reality is that leading up to the war, and I think, obviously go and prove it, but I think the weakness that was shown by the division, there was an amazing amount of division that was going on in Israel between Jews of all different stripes. And I think it had reached a boiling point where the news was talking about all day long, and certainly our enemies were taking note. And what served, I think, as a result of this war, just like you've been outlining for us here, and that we've seen in many other places, is that it's unified us, it's brought us together, and it's reminded us that nobody's going to have our back. We have to have each other's backs.
Jesse, I went to Hebrew school, and, I'm from a pretty traditional Sephardic background, and, I'm a regular shul goer and all that stuff. And I always remember being taught, that we lost the Beit HaMikdash because of Sinat Chinam. And I said, no, we didn't lose it because of Sinat Chinam. We lost it because, some, emperor, some army came and defeated us. They were bigger and we were not as big, and we lost it, and that's the way it was. Until October the 7th. And then as this rally kept going and chugging along and everything, and then I saw what the power of unity looked like, I understood. For the first time, I understood why we lost the Beit HaMikdash, because we were not united. Everybody has differences of opinion. Some are on the left, some are on the right, some are a little bit more religious, and the others are a little bit less religious. But I didn't realize that you could lose everything through a lack of unity, and that's clearly what happened. And the unity that I felt during those 2 years is unlike anything I ever felt in my life.
I remember you telling me recently that you finally got back your freedom, so to speak, when all the hostages came home, and you found yourself with your wife trying to figure out what to do on a Sunday, because thank God, mission accomplished. The hostages came home, and it was time to wrap up. Your goal had been met, thank God. What was that like? Now, where does the focus shift to today?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, I'd like to tell you that standing out there until all the hostages came home was my idea. It was not my idea. When we started to become a bigger group, 20, 30, 40 people, we would start to attract local media and stuff like that. And then people would start screaming, oh, yeah, we're going to be here, until all the hostages are coming home. And I said, what? Like, we're going to stand out here until the hostages come home? Are you kidding? They may never come home. In fact, I doubt they will ever come home, because you don't know who we're dealing with. We're dealing with monsters, people who set people on fire in their own beds, in their own homes, men, women, and children. How would you ever have faith that they're going to all come home? And sure enough, I was proven wrong. They did come home, and all we had to do was stand together and pray. Every single rally, we did a bracha for the soldiers. We ended up the rally with a bracha for the soldiers, and Shira Ma'alot Tehillim for the hostages. And so you're asking me, so what does the future hold? I don't know. I think what it does hold is something great. We have a group that we can count. We can ask each other anything, and we'll come to the their rescue. And I think we've got a very, very strong core. And through my other community work, I'm going to bring that energy to bear. But I know that the community needs help. They need leadership. They need inspiration. They need courageous inspiration, courageous leadership. It's not enough to cut a check once a year, or maybe go to, menorah lighting somewhere around Hanukkah and, go to shul once in a while. There's a lot more that we need as a community from each other. And I hope and pray that Hashem gives me the health and the strength and the time to continue what we started, of course, in a different form. We're not going to be standing at Bathurst and Sheppard forever, obviously. But there'll be other things that we'll do to bring our community together so that we should never be apart. We should never be fighting one another.
Oh, man, absolutely, 100%. Now, standing up for Israel is obviously going to invite hostility. We see that everywhere, and we saw it at Bathurst and Sheppard. We saw that they came out and they were across the street and they tried to agitate, and they did everything that they could to get a rise out of us and to make it violent and to do all these different things. And then just this past weekend in Toronto, I'm sure you've heard the news, where a building in a Jewish neighborhood was ransacked and they tore down 50 mezuzahs from elderly apartments. These are people who, a lot of them were affected by World War II, and now they're opening up their doors and seeing mezuzahs are torn down just this past weekend. But thank God we've got other Jewish organizations that step up immediately and do the right things and give them support and put the mezuzahs back up and give them Hanukkah packages and reassure them that we're still there. But how do you deal with this hostility? How bad did it get? Was it ever personal?
Look, Jesse, for me and someone else, it's a little bit different. I've been in sort of the demonstration, counter-protest, the rally business since my 20s. They can't get to me. What they want to do is get a rise out of us so that we do something stupid, that we get arrested, that we get injured, that we make ourselves look stupid. I don't let that happen. And a lot of people who come to the rally who'd never been to a rally before became very emotional at the sight of a Palestinian flag and, the taunts and the hate. And we told them, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just don't engage. We're not here to talk to them. We're here to talk to our people, to inspire our people. We're never going to persuade them that they're wrong and that we're right, or vice versa. They think it's their land. We think it's our land. That's it. So I don't let it get to me. Of course, there were some, there have been many threats, and there's been lots of things that people have done to disparage me or my business or whatever. But that's what it is to be a leader. You have to show by example. If all of us are going to be afraid to speak up because of our jobs or our careers or our businesses, how could we survive in the galut? How is it possible that we can make a life here in Canada or in other countries if we just hide? We can't do that. Remember, that's how this all started, Jesse.
Right.
Because I didn't want kids to take off their kippahs. I didn't want them to miss a day of school. I didn't want our community to be told to run and hide. It's not a solution. If you really are in a situation where you can't do anything but, God forbid, run and hide, then you shouldn't be here. The only place and the only solution is Israel and Aliyah. That's it. So as long as you have hope that you can stand up and be proud, a proud Jew, a proud Canadian, a proud member of your community, if you can't do that, this is not the place for you.
Guidy, I know that we could talk a long time, and God willing, we'll have you back on this podcast again just to talk about some of the other things, because I know that you're not slowing down. Thank God. I want to wish you continued success and continued strength, and that Hashem should be at your back, and you should continue to do his work. And when you do, you should continue to see his hand, just like you did when you started the rally.
Thank you, Jesse, and God bless you for the work that you do in bringing interesting people to your podcast and inspiring the community. That's what it's all about. We all have our chelek, we all have our little corner, our little piece of the puzzle to solve. So thank you too.
Kid, have an amazing day.
You too. Be well.
Take care. Thank you for spending time with us on the Trust Factor podcast. If you've heard something today that moved you, save this episode and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming conversations that challenge, empower, and uplift. And if you're on social media, connect with us. Leave your thoughts. Drop a quote that resonated with you. Hashtag the Trust Factor Podcast. Until next time, keep growing in your trust and keep living with purpose. I'm Jesse Revivo, and this has been the Trust Factor Podcast. Thanks for listening.